Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 34 of the 40 Days of Hope, a message today that God can help you serve. There's a very common theme throughout the Gospels that Jesus teaches us, and it's that it's really important as Christians that we are looking to serve others, benefit others throughout our lives. And I suppose I just want to encourage you, if you're listening, that my experience is that God helps me all the time. Not saying that I'm always serving. What I mean is He helps me in this area. You know, God helps us always to do the things He calls us to do. When I imagine what heaven is like, sometimes I think of it as a place where everyone thinks of everyone else. Everyone puts everyone else first. You don't need to think about yourself because someone else is thinking of you and looking out for your best wishes. And your reading recently was about Jesus, washing his disciples' feet before he was arrested and crucified. That was what he chose to do. And can you imagine the creator of the universe, God himself on his knees washing like our feet. It's just crazy to get my head around that sometimes. But it just speaks to us about what's important to God, putting others first. And I think this is a view that is countercultural. When I turn on the TV, all the advertisements often just seem to be about how can you better your life. Oh, you want this will improve your life for you. It's like benefiting ourselves all the time. How can we make our lives better for ourselves? I listen to a podcast called Clockwork Junkie regularly. And Mark, the speaker there, actually suffered greatly with depression and is finally out of that after 10 years. But, and he says, that actually we have to look after number one first is you. You have to look after you first, before you can look after anyone else. And I'm not saying I disagree with that. Mark's given me a great insight into actually how people who suffer with depression, what it might feel like. And of course, when you're in that place, there's a time and a place where where people can't think outside because they obviously need to focus on getting better themselves. And of course, I completely just want to, I suppose, clarify that I'm not saying that we never look after ourselves, number one. But if you are in a place, I suppose, where you can, God calls us to and thinks it's, I suppose it's very, very important. Also in this podcast, I was listening, Mark and James, his brother, were having a chat one day, and non-Christians are often do feel like this. Clearly, Mark and James were saying, it can be so hard sometimes. How do we know who to help first? We go down the streets and we see all these homeless people. We just know of all this poverty around us, even in our own countries, and then we think of third world countries. It can be just quite overwhelming. Where do we start? How do we make a small difference? So I suppose I'd just like to talk to you about how I suppose that plays out in my life. Now, I am very aware of the Matthew chapter 6, verse 2-4, which actually says this, okay? And it says, Jesus says, truly I tell you, in chapter 6, verse 2. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honoured by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. So it's that challenge when we serve. It's not serving for our own benefit, I suppose, selfish ambition. It's serving just so that we know God sees what we do. And actually, I'm talking about this podcast loads, but actually Mark shared a picture today as well, and it was actually very interesting. It was of someone giving to a homeless person while taking a selfie. And it's like, again, the idea in our culture to promote ourselves when we serve others. Now, I feel like a complete hypocrite because when I was going to looked at your readings, obviously last night, I feel this is what I have to share on, and obviously sharing that properly, I feel like I need to explain how that works out in my life. So, feeling like a bit of a hypocrite at the same time sharing with you, but I just said I'd say that. Okay, so firstly, I think I'd like to talk about it can be really hard, when you're tired at the end of the day, you can just feel like you're just getting through life yourself. How can you think about anyone else? And that's sometimes how I feel. In a church, sometimes I can get caught up in comparison. You can think, oh, look at all they're doing, and God definitely doesn't want us to be comparing ourselves. Sometimes, I've done things to serve others because I felt they maybe expected it of me, living up to expectations that maybe people don't even have of you, but you think they have of you, so you do it. And God challenged me a while back on that mentality of not doing things because I think others would expect it, or doing things to please others. And I'm actually in a season now where I'm just praying to God, show me where exactly I'm meant to serve you, God, particularly because there's many opportunities and many good things to do, but it's really key to know which area God specifically wants you, because otherwise you could just be, doing too much, and I definitely signed up to something before that was definitely, I don't think it was God's will. It was a good thing in my life, but looking back, I could see that it brought me more stress than anything, and it wasn't really God's will looking back, but and God taught me that lesson through it, I suppose. Okay, so, bit of, don't really like talking about this, but I suppose I'm just going to say it because it was in your readings on Corinthians actually yesterday as well. Okay, so how do I serve God even though I don't do anything sometimes? That might sound strange. Finance. Okay, right. So basically, I grew up in the Catholic Church and a non-denominational Christian church. Now, I don't know about this word tithing. It might be new to some of you. But it's this idea that we give 10% is a biblical number of how much you give to God of your finances. And growing up in a Catholic church, I just felt whenever the offering went around, maybe I'm completely wrong in this, but it's like you give your spare change, or you give a little bit, but not really a sacrifice. However, in other Christian churches, often there's it's talked about and not necessarily expected, but it's just in the teaching, it's that we should be giving 10% of what we give to God. And biblically, it says Proverbs 3 verse 9. It says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce." Now, this took me many, many years in my Christian walk to actually come to that place of trusting God with my finances. 10% is a sacrifice. All right, Mark and I sometimes think, oh, what holiday could we have had this year? But it's so worth it, because actually you're just being obedient to God, and He always gives you all your needs. And then when I read verses in the Bible that says, seek first His kingdom and everything else will be given to you, I just feel like I can call up God and His promises and just say, look, God, I've been praying for this need now, and I am seeking your kingdom, and through finances as well. And actually, the reason I find this is a way of serving is because my church in particular serves so many people in our communities, the homeless, people in debt, so people overseas in pure poverty. And I suppose in that sense, even by doing nothing but just investing finances, you're serving. And non-Christians do it too. You give it to charities. People give it to charities, might regularly come out as a standing order to charities. And I just challenge you, give 10% to these charities. It hurts. But again, when I see how wealth is just distributed across the world, it's just so unfair, again, it just gets you thinking. I know someone who left a church because they were approached for money and they were a new Christian. And, I would have done the exact same if I was a new Christian and someone approached me looking for money. I think we really need to be really, really careful. Even if I was a mature Christian and I joined a church and I was approached for money quick on, I don't know, it just I might think, what's their heart behind it? Do they want me here because they want my money? And I'm not saying that against anyone, but I'm just saying that we have to be very careful in this area, especially around new Christians. But also, if you are a new Christian, God's not going to love you any less if you don't tithe or give 10%. Just give, you just go to pray to Him and see what you're comfortable with Him. And as your faith grows, then you might be more comfortable giving Him more money, I suppose. The reason Mark and I have faith to trust God with our finances is because Mark's actually seen so many miracles through charity work that he's done, and miraculous provision of money coming through. So it's just easy to trust God in that sense. And the next thing I'd like to talk about is actually serving God, which is really important. We all call to serve God, and it's first in our homes, in those closest to us. And I'd like to read out from Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 to 8. And it says, Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Just imagine Him washing the disciples' feet. Who, being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to His own advantage. Rather, He, Jesus, made Himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, He humbled Himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. So I think that's the challenge in our homes and in our families, valuing others above ourselves in our homes. yeah, okay, so guys, I hope yeah, I hope that's maybe encouraged someone, might challenge some of you. And again, it's just an area that I'm always asking God to help me in, always. Okay, God bless everyone.